let's talk about the game itself. So Rob Phinisee is the story of the game. Rob Phinisee, a guy who I think they did a good job on the broadcast of beating that home. Grew up in Lafayette, Indiana, which is a rarity. There aren't a lot of guys from Lafayette that play for the Hoosiers, Tate.
Because again,
for good reason.
Purdue is in West Lafayette,
right? So he's from Purdue country, goes to IU, and for those who don't completely know the story, because like there was that part, and I think that the broadcast did a good job of explaining that this guy comes off the bench. He was a 3-year starter, just explodes in the first half. What do you have, 17 at halftime?
Yeah.
I jokingly tweeted at
and then the only other points he had were the game-winning points.
That's right, yeah. At Assembly calls this Indiana basketball podcast that I go on sometimes, and I love those guys. And at halftime I tweeted, "Do you think Rob Phinisee is going to opt out and prepare for the draft?" Because that's how good he was playing. He just an unbelievable first half. But the other like wrinkle of Rob Phinisee is that he's basically like an abused puppy under Archie Miller, which like is not to say that Archie was like, you know, it wasn't like a Bob Knight, Neil Reed.
No. But he just like he had a short leash.
His confidence was non-existent. Like his entire he wasn't like a program changing recruit for IU. It wasn't like people were losing their minds when he committed to IU, but he was good. He was like the good get, a kid from Lafayette. He was, I forget how many stars, 4 stars. I don't know if
4 stars
or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was like a good get for IU, and he never has like kind of reached the level you want. And a lot of people, you know, might say that it's on him and he hasn't developed whatever. Other people are like, look the way Archie uses him, that every time he catches the ball, Archie's telling him, don't look at the rim, look at Trace, get the ball to Trace, never look to score, always look, you know. And he just kind of like went through this psychological thing where like very obviously had destroyed him.
Yeah.
In fact, this was a quote that Mike Woodson had this week talking about Rob Phinisee before the Purdue game. He's had a tough go at it in the past. I'm just trying to get him to forget what happened in the past. You're playing for Coach Woodson now, and Coach Woodson loves you, and I'm in your corner. That's what he said about Rob Phinisee before the Purdue game, before he did that. So like that was the story for me. It was like I the first half is Phinisee's going nuts. I'm like jumping it around in my living room, and it wasn't even that. I mean, I was obviously cheering for IU, but like I didn't care. It was more I was cheering for Rob Phinisee. I was like, this is insane. This is like a storybook.
It's like a Disney movie.
Yes, it's a Disney movie. What's transpiring right here?
Rudy.
And that bears itself out. Not only like Phinisee comes off the bench and plays really well, and then he comes off the bench in the second half, which is pretty funny too, because I think IU fans are scratching their head like, why is Miller Cobb out there to what is going on? What is happening? Why is Phinisee out there?
And Trace Jackson Davis was, I mean, this was not his game. Like if you looked at this game on paper when we talked in November, you would think Travion Williams versus Trace Jackson Davis. Yes. What a showdown. This game was not that
It was Zach Edey versus Michael Durr. Yeah. It was Jaden Ivey versus Rob, you know.
Yeah.
But Phinisee, the other thing I was going to say to talking about the game-winning shot, Tate, is that he didn't just draw up the game-winning shot for Phinisee once. He did it twice.
After
Phinisee misses the first one, and then Mike Woodson, like that's unbelievable, honestly. Like that's coaching. If Archie Miller was coach, and again, I love Archie, and I genuinely did love Archie, and I love playing for him, and I hope he lands on his.
No, but it shows that I'm actually in your corner. It's like you bricked that first 3.
If Archie Miller is coaching Indiana when Rob Phinisee bricks that first 3 towards the end of the game, the first game-winning shot, quote unquote, his ass, he might get, not only is he not shooting it again, he might just take him out and put him on the bench. And Mike Woodson was like, no, we're going back to you. You're going to hit the shot. And it wasn't even like that was a tough shot. Stefanovic had a hand in his face and he was sort of faded away.
But I don't know Stefanovic's, train of thought or whatever, but it did feel, if you watch it live, it felt like his hand was there, but he almost like didn't go.
He's like, he's not going to shoot.
Because he's like, he's no way this guy's shooting this after he just missed the last one. You know what I mean? And that's why it was so beautiful, because he shouldn't be shooting that. Every other year, there's no way he's shooting that.
Yes.
But then he does, and then he makes it. And it's like,
So
euphoria.
that's kind of the backstory to those who, I don't know, for people that were maybe watching that didn't really understand, like that the Rob.
There was a bigger story.
Yes,
there's a game within the game.
And that to me, to get emotional and sentimental about college basketball, that is why I love this sport so much.
Of course,
that stage, this is a sport that, quote unquote, only matters for 2 weeks in March. That could not be further from the truth, because no matter what happens, if Rob Phinisee doesn't score another point the rest of his Indiana career, he will have that moment. He will be a legend in Bloomington. He will feel like all of that.
Maybe not Lafayette, but
not somebody. You can't go home. Bad news. Can't go back home. But those stages like that can only happen in college sport. That can only happen in college sports.
And the beauty of
like
college sports is like to see someone grow into that player. I mean, we see them when they first get there, and they're kind of like this gangly kid. You're like, I see something they could be.
Which answers the question, like, how can you like watching college basketball when guys are bricking threes and dribbling off their foot? And I'll tell you why, because when you watch 3 years of Rob Phinisee not developing like you want him to, and then last night happens and it
finally clicks.
As an IU fan, you've invested so much in this kid, like watching him and cheering for him and hoping it works. And it finally clicks and he hits a game-winning shot to beat Purdue for the first time in 6 years. And he's from Lafayette. It's like, what?
It's like,
that's why.
That's why we're here, folks.
That's why we're here. What else? TJD didn't play. Do we talk about that a little bit? Because I found it interesting that like IU seemed to be better-ish without him. Not really, but kind of like
No,
it was an interesting development because it was the second game in a row that Purdue had played. The reason it stood out to me was that when Purdue played Illinois, the same sort of thing happened with Illinois, where Kofi got in foul trouble and he goes to the bench, and I forget how much Illinois was down at the time, but the vibe was like, oh, like Illinois is losing already. Now Kofi's in foul trouble. They're really in trouble now. And then like the guards, like I said earlier, we're finished. We catch the ball and look for trades. Like the guards were like, all right, I guess we got to make plays now. And Plummer starts hitting shots, and Trent Frazier. I felt like the same thing happened with Indiana, where when Trace Jackson Davis is in the game, it becomes so much about Trace Jackson Davis versus whatever Purdue big guys out there, that when he was out of the game, they were like,
no, they were a better team.
Let it rip.
Yeah.
Xavier Johnson had a great game, like, and they, I don't know. I found that fascinating.
Which is also coaching too, because in the moment, Mike Woodson, you make decisions like maybe going into the game, you're saying to yourself, Trace needs to have a huge game. But then as the game is unfolding, you're like, no, he doesn't. It is what it is. And that is a part of, not to go back to Archie, but you know what I mean? I'm not sure.
And I liked the guy. Oh, man.
But I just want to give Mike Woodson his credit. I mean, this was a great moment.
Are you worried about Purdue at all?
I mean, I'm the same amount of worried as I was.
Same,
before,
yeah.
I mean?
I don't think I learned anything about Purdue that I didn't already know.
No.
Yeah.
It does not bode well. I mean, I guess it does in some sense because they have played in so many close games, but it doesn't inspire confidence that this team does not seem to have the ability to, quote unquote, like blow out somebody unless it was in November or December. Like I'm waiting for them to click back into that mode a little bit.
That's a problem.
And I want to see if they can,
Yeah. And I think a game like Phinisee and Xavier Johnson for IU carried the Hoosiers.
Yes.
And
18 points, 20 points.
It kind of highlighted the importance of guards in modern college basketball. Not that guards have not always been important, but a team like Purdue that is so big guy oriented and it's so we know their makeup. A game like last night kind of highlights that to me. That's the fear I have. That's the fear I'll always have moving forward. As I said, we talked about Purdue on the show earlier this week, and I said like that there are three problems, and I think some of them are fixable, some of them aren't. I came away from this game the exact same as I did before. It's like you cannot trust any of your guards really. I mean, Stefanovic is good, but he's limited. He's a great shooter. Can do things other than shooting. Like he can score off the bounce a little bit, but he's not creating anything for anybody else. Hunter's not creating anything for anybody else. Thompson's not creating anything for anybody else. The only guy that you can put the ball in his hands to create stuff for other people is Jaden Ivey.
I want Purdue to get that elusive Final Four. I don't. Well, Coach Titus, I hope he's not on the line. I hope he's not listening to this. But I do want them to get over the hump. But I am so happy for Indiana. Last night it had to be Indiana. That was the other part of this. That I kind of gave Purdue a pass because this was bigger than
it was big.
Team,
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. It felt the exact same way as I said it before, the Ohio State Michigan football.
Yeah.
The exact same way. Like I watched.
Things had to go the right way for Indiana or for Michigan to win that game. Like it's snowing outside.
Yes.
All of those things. It all kind of came together.
Yes, and as an Ohio State alum, I remember watching that game and thinking like this sucks, but also like. It just had to, like there's nothing we could have. There's nothing you replay that game 10 times. Michigan's probably winning, 7 or 8, just because like
of certain all the things that were coming together.
At a certain point, the stars start to line, and you just shrug your shoulders, and you're like, that happens sometimes.
Hey there, thanks for watching Titus and Tate. For the full friend of the program experience, subscribe right below and come join us for all things college basketball. The action is heating up. Come join Titus and Tate.